Elias Nwana was born in Bali Yonga, in the northwest region of Cameroon, circa 1933. First son to Bamba Kala and Nwana, his presumed birthday of 26 February 1933 was estimated upon entry into primary school in Mamfe. At birth, he was given the nickname Masabangban because he was a fairer complexion than any other child who was born in an adjacent compound in Bali. That child was called Masasisi. Elias was born into a very tight-knit family of the Fum branch of the Tanujam family in Bali. Bamba, Elias' dad, had 5 siblings: Ba David Nwana, Ba Daniel Sama, Ka Mani Fogam, Tangui Francisca Chapia, and Na Ma George Fonfu were all very close. As a result of this strong bond, Papa Elias was the first of several brothers and sisters, biological and extended, in the Tanujam family of Bali Yonga. Some of his surviving sisters, brothers, and cousins, some of them in the audience today include Ma Fe Fosam, Ma Galika Du, Ni Jacob Sama, Ma Magi Wana Ndeli, Ma Evangeline Fogam, Ma Justine Fogam, Ma Juan Fogam, Ma Therese Munu Ni Fonfu, Ma Karo Pulua, and Ma Nanda Pamela Nwana. Arguably, the most important person in his early life was late Papa David Fum Nwana, also known as Kobo Nwana, junior brother to Bamba Kala, who played a pivotal role as his father and sponsored him through secondary education at St. Joseph's College, Sasse. Papa Elias' autobiography, recording what the family fondly calls the Green Book, shows how his life's philosophy was influenced by the significant life-changing events of his early life. The picture of the cover page of Papa Elias' autobiography, which is one of Ba Kobo Nwana, shows the impact he had in his life. In fact, he considered him to be his father, and here's why. Ba Kobo Nwana, also known as David Fum Nwana, was a police officer based out of Mamfe. Bali people have an interesting way of changing names. The name Ba Kobo was derived from his rank of corporal in the police force. Ba Kobo Nwana came to Bali from Mamfe for a visit and ran a competition to find the most athletic child in the compound. Papa Elias won the competition, and that culminated in him being taken to Mamfe and put through school. Papa Elias' last name, Nwana, was taken when he enrolled in primary school in Mamfe. Since he didn't have a birth certificate at birth, his birthday was estimated as 26 February 1933. How is his birthday estimated, one might ask? Well, apparently, back in those days, the ability of a child to reach and touch their left ear with their right hand would place you at the right age for attending school. On his arrival in Mamfe, young Papa Elias was reunited with his big brother, Papa Moses Nwana, father to Ma Bia Ambe, Ma Angeline Fombe, Ma Kuna Tita Mukumi. Papa Moses taught Papa Nwana all aspects of police barracks life, including self-discipline and homecraft. Papa Moses also taught Papa Nwana the alphabet, Pidgin English, and English. Papa Moses and Papa Elias were very close until his Papa Moses' untimely death in 1996. Papa Elias looked up to Ni Moses as he called up and stopped by his Atwa Zeri residence most Sundays on his way back to church for their weekly catch-up. It was an honor for him to hand over Ba Moses' daughter, Makuna, to her prince, Ba Tita Mukumi, in June 2014. Papa Elias' mother in Mamfe was Mama Helen Deep, first wife of Papa David Nwana. Because of the distance from Mamfe to Bali, Bamenda, Papa Elias did not meet his biological mother, Najinla, until much later in his life. The story goes that Najinla spotted her son, Elias in the Bali market during his visit to Bali and excitedly hugged him, cried, and offered him granuts from her market stall. Papa Elias did not know who she was, but was typically cordial and polite. When Papa Elias went to the compound, he was recounting the story of the lady he met in the market. When she walked in and was introduced as his biological mother. He formed a close relationship with Najinla, who unfortunately died not long after their meeting. Najinla's sister, Ka'ana, played a constant mothering role in Papa's life. Ka'ana adored Pa Elias and mothered him until his old age. As will become evident later in this documentary, it will become clear that Papa Elias Nwana's life philosophy was reformed by the two key realities of his childhood. First, Papa Elias never forgot about the origins of any success that he subsequently gained in life. It all came from winning an athletic competition that took him out to Bali to school in Mafe. Secondly, he was hugely influenced by philosophy of his uncle and adopted father, Papa Davidson Nwana. Papa Davidson didn't define children by biology. To both of them, every child deserves a chance.
Odilia Nwana was born in Balinyonga on November 7, 1942. She was the first surviving child of Mama Pauline Kakiti Domatob, ni Jimontam Gwanfobe, and Papa Vincent Philip Domatob Jifongo. Her older sister, Mama Teresia Mvigo, died in childhood, henceforth leaving Mama Odilia as the firstborn of the Jifongod and Gwanfobe dynasties. Odilia grew up in a very tight-knit family. She was the first of 6 surviving biological siblings. Auntie Rose, Na Lela, Niba, ni Domato, Auntie Mary Fang, ni Domato, Auntie Anne Domato, Uncle Jerry Komia Domato, Auntie Bidi Domato, and Auntie Frida Fokum, ni Domato. Mama Odilia's parents had very close relationships with their siblings and cousins, to the extent that she grew up with cousins who were more like brothers and sisters. The photos below show Papa Domatop and his maternal cousins at the funeral of his junior brother, Pa Ans Mbuno. Pa Ans was the father to Mama's sister and brother here with us today, Mrs. Beatrice Chungong, and brother, Mr. Leo Mbuno. Other cousins in the audience include Nike Dema. Mama Odilia's mother, Mama Paulina Domatov, hailed from the Jimontam Gwanfobe family. She had 3 brothers, Ba Fombit, Gwanfobe Jimontam, Ba Wilson Jitabon Jimontam, and Ba Edward Young Amsen Jimontam. Mama Odilia was the first child from the Jimontam Gwanfobe line. The next child in the Gwanfobe line was Dr. Matthew Gwanfobe, also affectionately known in the family as Nimati. Mama Odilia and Nimati had a very special bond, as will soon be evident in this documentary. Other brothers and sisters from the Gwanfobe line presented here include Auntie Teresa Gwanfobe and Uncle Julius Gwanfobe. As a first child in the family, Mama Odilia had many family members who looked up to her. Auntie Rose Niba is the immediate junior sister of Mama Odilia. Here are her recollections of her Ma Odi as a big sister.
Growing up as little children, little girls in the house, my elder sister, my Odilia, was very orderly and neat. She always took care of the yard, the house, the plates, and made sure that everything was very clean. I remember her babysitting at a very young age. I can't remember seeing any lady in the home doing babysitting for my mother, Mami, calling her Kakiti Tomato. But Mama Odilia was one of the babysitters at a very young age for her siblings. And I can recall how she used to struggle with Mary Fan. And on the day that Mami cooked beans, that little bowl that on which Mama putting the beans on Mary farm was not yet finished. And Mary would cry and cry and cry. And Mama Odilia would make sure that she runs after Mama to continue putting the beans in the pan to comfort her. She continued with this, and in her marital home, she brought up her children very well, considering that she had learned her babysitting at home. When she went to college, she used to come home with frocks for me, some beautiful dresses, which I used to admire, and when I dress up, I'll feel as if I'm looking like her too in college. She was very caring, very loving, and very sincere in whatever she was doing. She always advised us to do the right things, especially when we were playing roughly. Mama Odilia, she carried out with this aspect of her life to be good to everybody till her death. She was kind, she was sincere, she was very appreciative, and she loved looking good. I'm trying to look like her today. Bye-bye, Mama Odilia. Hey, I must not forget when young Dr. Elias Nwana came round to betroth her. Oh, there was a lot of excitement in the home. I was just admiring them. And when they got married, I went to their home and I saw the way they lived. And I thought, oh yes, go and get married too and live like them. Ah, here I am. Maudi and Dr. Elias Nwana, stay well wherever you are. And don't forget to send us that love that we share here.
Mama Odilia began school in kindergarten and was then enrolled in the Roman Catholic primary school in Bansa. When Papa Vincent Domatov was transferred to Bafut, she continued her primary school there up in RCM school to Standard 5 when she had moved to Sopo Girls' School, where she completed her Standard 6 and obtained her first school leaving certificate. The status quo in those days was for girls to be prepared for marriage, but Papa and Mama Domatov embraced different values from their peers of the time. They emphasized and provided equal opportunities for education to all the Domatov children, comprising of 7 daughters and 1 son. They had no choice but to be pioneer feminists in Cameroon. It is to their credit that all 7 of their children excelled in those chosen professions. Following Odilia's primary school education in 1954, she was successful in the entrance examinations into Holy Rosary College, Okoyong, and St. Francis Teacher Training College, Fiango, Kumba. Pa Vincent Domatov declined Mama's space in Okoyong because he wanted his first daughter to pursue a professional path to become a teacher. And so it was that Odilia enrolled into St. Francis College, Fiango, Kumba. Here is a photo of Mama and some of her classmates at Fiango.
My name is Lucy Kija. I met Odi of blessed memory in Fiango, the late 50s. She was called in Fiango Manta Odilia Domatov. I was called Grace Lucio. If my mind does not fail me, I remember my number is 204 and hers is 187. We had a nice time in Fiango. Slim, tall Odi as we met. We were friends, age mates, and classmates. We had a nice time. And as time went on, we realized that our parents, that is our fathers, were both teachers. Pa Domatov was a teacher, and my father, of blessed memory, Joseph Yu, was a teacher. Both of them taught in Genicom and got married the same day, and the school band animated their occasion. When we realized this, we became more tight as friends because we thought that we had something to share together. Odi was somebody reserved. She didn't want rowdy people around her, but she was very humorous. During our leisure time, we may go out to the school orchard and harvest grapes, come back, sit as we are eating. We are trying to translate our vernacular into English, teaching each other your language. But guess what, Odi? When she taught you anything, make sure you don't say it where Maliman is near. Because we didn't know the meaning, but she knew. And she always made us laugh. And that is how time went on. During that grade 3 course, all of us did well and passed, went out. And the Catholic Mission contracted us to teach in their schools. After 1 year, we came back to Kumba again. This time we were more mature, less naive, and we were able to choose our priorities. Odi was very, very committed to her studies, and she would not like you to disturb her. But she will always have time for her leisure, pleasure, and so on. But nobody disturbs her. She was a very good writer. She had good writing. All of us admired her. Especially one of our tutors, Sister Mary St. Paul, admired Odi and encouraged us to emulate. Her writing was good. Now, she fell in love with one man they called at that time Elias Nwana, of blessed memory now.
Her home from home, while in secondary school, was with Pa Domatop's bosom friend, Ba Fombangana. Staying in Sopo with the Fombans, Mama Odilia gained another younger sister, Rose Fomban, now Professor Rose Leke. Ma Rose was grateful to have a big sister. She wrote, "As a young girl, I went to school with much confidence, knowing that there was a big sister to protect and guide me in school and to take me back home." The relationship between Professor Leke and Mama endured for a long time, and it was befitting that she was part of a wonderful support system for Ma Odi in her final days in Yaoundé. She followed through and completed the grade 3 and grade 2 teacher elementary course, followed by a higher elementary teacher course. After completing her training in St. Francis Teacher Training College, Fiango, she taught at the Queen of Rosary College in Okoyong for a short while before moving to teach in Mankon and Bali. Later on in her career, she enrolled in the Higher Teaching Training Institution in the University of Yaoundé, where she qualified as a secondary school teacher with a focus on economics. In addition to her formal education, Mama Odilia was a sponge for being an educator for life. She became a role model, wife, mother, grandmother, and teacher.
Elias, secondary school and education. Papa Elias Nwana was admitted into St. Joseph College Sase in 1949, along with other classmates like Professor Dan Lantum, Mr. John Nibangu, Professor Boni Nasa, Mr. Christopher Tambe, Dr. Anthony Maimo, Honorary Ene Effiom, and Mr. Mpafe.
3 of his contemporaries of the 1949 class are alive. These are Monsignor Clemens Ndeze, Mr. Peter Nsada Eba, and Mr. Simon So Awasum.
The following excerpt from Mr. Awasum gives us a glimpse of Elias Nwana as a student in Sase College. During socials, he taught us some Bali songs and dances. One of the songs was something like this. Moke pala pala ha 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 pala pala, mope pala pala, gungum pala pala. He was very adventurous. We had a Nigerian science teacher called Mr. Okeye. He started a boxing club, and Dr. Nwana was one of the very few to venture to be a member. I remember the coach sparring with him, and we started cheering him. He then gave Dr. Nwana an uppercut, and he started bleeding from his mouth. Dr. Nwana, in great pain, cried out, "My mouth, sir!" And the coach in reply said, "Go and wash your mouth." From that day, we nicknamed Dr. Nwana, "My mouth, sir." This episode scarred many of us from enrolling in the boxing club. He had the leadership quality and behaved maturer than many of us. End quote. From the accounts of his teachers and contemporary students, he was venerated for his discipline, moral rectitude, and fairness. It was not a surprise, therefore, that he was elected senior prefect in 1953. Papa's voice of reason and his skills as a moderator were evident in his tenure as senior prefect, as evidenced by the following recollection from Pa Awasum. Quote, "The principal was Reverend Father Francis Woodman. His high-handedness provoked the first strike by the entire school with Dr. Nwana as senior prefect. To have dared to strike was like a mortal sin in those days. To imagine that the students had the guts to strike in the only secondary school in the country was unimaginable, yes, but it happened. The students boycotted classes and church services and the refectory for 3 days. At one point, Form 1 students who could not tolerate it anymore gathered those volcanic pebbles with many of them around the campus and were ready to storm the glass windows of the presbytery. It required the intervention of the white education officer, the chiefs from Boya, and the diplomatic prowess of Dr. Nwana, the senior prefect, to calm the storm." End quote. Papa Elias graduated from Sase College in 1953, having obtained the Senior Cambridge Certificate. Papa's love for teaching from a very early age was fanatical. His first real job would have been working for Barclays Bank, but he turned that down because, in his words, he had a burning desire to teach and help my father educate my brothers and sisters in appreciation of what he had done for them. In 1954, he was enrolled into Bishop Shanahan's teacher's training course in Olu, Nigeria, along with 2 of his best friends, Mr. Ben K. Simo and Her Royal Highness Fon Moses Galabe. Upon graduation, the 3 of them, along with Mr. Peter Nsanda Eba, formed a strong cohort of young Cameroonian teachers at the prestigious Sase College. Note that they became teachers only a year after having been students at the same institution. Whilst teaching at Sase College, he embarked on studies for Advanced Level General Certificate of Education, successfully obtaining good results in 3 subjects: history, literature, and British economic history. In 1960, he was awarded a scholarship along with Mr. Francis Nkwane and Mr. Daniel Name to study for a bachelor's degree at the University of Ghana, Legon. He credits the award of his scholarship to a former student, Peter Ekona, who worked as a clerk for Honorary Ngomjua. The story goes that he was initially overlooked for a scholarship, and Peter protested violently from his lowly clerk position until he was heard. Back in 1960, the University of Ghana was an affiliated college to the University of London. During his second year at Legon, the college gained its bona fide authority to become a fully fledged university. This change was lodged in Elias's mind, and he spent the remainder of his working life in advocacy of university education in Cameroon. During his time at Legon, he was lucky to secure work placements at the Volta River Authority, the body that was tasked with constructing the strategic electricity generating Akosombo Dam in Tema. During his placement years, he also helped in the supervision of the construction of the first resettlement village in New Ajena. He obtained an honours degree in sociology in 1963. Whilst in Ghana, Elias found an opportunity for scholarships in agriculture at Addis Ababa University. His recommendation for his former student and advocate Peter Ekona was successful. Unfortunately, they lost touch, and Papa Elias looked for Mr. Ekona until his final days. In 1965, he embarked on a master's degree in education at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, and proceeded to complete a doctorate in education from the same institution in 1968. His dissertation, entitled An Investigation into an Objective Way of Examining Student Teachers in Practical Teaching in West Cameroon Teacher Training Institutions, is in total resonance with what he went on to do for the remainder of his career, namely educating educators. Upon graduation, he had opportunities to stay and work at UCLA. However, he was convinced by one of his mentors, the late Professor Bernard Nsokika Fonlon, to come back to Cameroon to build the educational system for his country. It was thus that the newly minted Dr. Elias Nwana came back to Cameroon to resume his career as an education pioneer in Anglophone Cameroon.
The following is a timeline of the early story of Elias and Odilia. It provides insights into the art of courtship marriage at the time, as well as some of their traits. In 1955, Elias, at that time a teacher in Sase, first met Odilia on a visit to Ba Fomban's house in Tico. In 1956, Elias went to Bamenda to attend the ordination of Father Lucas Atan. At this time, he took the opportunity to try to convince Papa Domatob that Odilia should attend Okoyong. He failed in this. Papa Domatob's choice was St. Francis Fiango. In 1958, Elias began looking for a wife. His friend Anthony Fogako suggested Odilia. The penny dropped with Elias. From 1958 to 1959, Elias wrote multiple letters to Odilia. He received no response. He finally wrote one last letter, and he received a one-line reply. She said, "Whatever will be, will be. The future is not ours to tell." In 1959, Elias visited Odilia's uncle in Tico to ask for her hand in marriage. Post his visit, a couple of issues were resolved, and Elias received a positive response. In 1960, Elias went to study in Legon. At this same time, Odilia received admission to St. Francis Fiango to pursue her Grade 2 teacher's qualification. From 1960 to 1963, Elias went to university. In 1962, at this time, Odilia obtained her Grade 2 certificate and proceeded to teach at RCM Valley. During this period, they were communicating by letters. In 1963, Elias returned to Cameroon and was appointed to work in Bamenda. His courtship with Odilia continued during this period. Finally, on December 26, 1963, Elias and Odilia were wedded in Boya. Elias made sure that he engaged with as many of Odilia's family as possible, particularly some of the most important people in Odilia's life, as narrated by Odilia's sister, Ma Mary Fang, and cousin, Ni Mati Guanfogbe. And he started making an impact in their lives even before he was married.
Came to see us in Likomba in the 50s when I was staying with my uncle, Papa Hans Nwana. And as a child, I did not know what his mission was. But eventually when he came the second time, he came with so much fruits from his garden because he was then a teacher in Sase. He had his garden. brought the best tomatoes, the best vegetables, fresh vegetables. And when he came, he went to Tiko Wharf and bought fish, fresh fish, and brought to the house. Little did I know what was his purpose. But later on, when my sister came for holidays, she was then in St. Francis College, Fiambu. When she came for holidays, Dr. Nwana visited the house again, and we used to go to church. He used to be so protective of my sister, always very, very protective of her and myself. At one stage, when he saw that my uncle was petting me so much, he came in and said, in our language, Papa, he said, Papa, you are spoiling this child because my uncle gave me everything that I needed. If I asked for something, he would give it, he would look for it and give me. Because I was the lone child in the house. So Dr. Nwana didn't like this. As a teacher, he already saw that that was not good. And I was so angry. I said, who is this man? I don't even know him. He comes to the house and he's saying that my uncle is spoiling me, my father is spoiling me. That was wrong. So I didn't like him so much, but he kept on coming. Each time he came with beautiful things with eggs. We cooked and ate, and my mother was a very good cook too. He went to, after some time, I never saw him anymore, but he later on came back, this time around in 1963, and they made their marriage in Boya. I attended the marriage. There I started liking him because he was taking care of my sister.
I am Matthew Basum Gwanfogbe, first son of Ba Jimontam Gwanfogbe, who was uncle to Ma Odilia Nwana. In 1961, when I was in CPC Bali, a gentleman came to visit me, and in the course of conversing, he introduced himself as Elias Nwana, and that he was interested in getting married to my cousin Odilia Nwana, and that's how I came to know him.
Papa Elias and Mama Odilia were married at the Roman Catholic Church in Boya. Their wedding ceremony was officiated by the Reverend Bishop Jules Peters. Unfortunately, these photos are the only surviving photos from their wedding, as the official wedding photographer's camera films were destroyed. In this photo, we have from left to right, Mr. Alfred Lebaga, Bishop Peters, Mr. Francis Nkwine, the groom, Elias, the bride, Odilia, Mr. Sunning Ju, Elias's cousin, Boben Gom Jua, Mr. Christopher Tambe, and Mr. Alfred Daiga. During their early marriage years, they settled briefly in Kumba and Bambili, where they lived a partnership which was the envy of many of their family and friends. Mama Odi's junior sister, Ma Mary, tells in her own inimitable way how the joys she witnessed of their partnership provided her with inspiration for getting married herself.
I went to visit them when now I went to college in St. Francis. I spent my holidays with them. They did my teaching aids for me. Together, they were talking together, they were always doing their things together, communicating, doing things together. They had their set of twins. When they wanted to bathe the baby, this one would be bathing this in he's bathing, my sister will be bathing the other one in her own basin. I admired them so much. To crown all, I was in my final year. I was going to do my final year, and they all did my teaching practice, my teaching aids. They taught me how to use them. Each time they did anyone, they explained to me how to teach with them, how to use it, when I'll use them. They sat together on the table every evening and did my teaching aids for me. I admired their union, and I thought marriage was a good thing.
In September of 1964, Odilia and Elias Nwana were blessed with their first children, a set of twins, Protu Samgwa and Hyacinth Samjela. As a consequence, they became Mani and Tani, monikers given to parents of twins. Unfortunately, in 1966, the first twin, Protu Samgwa Nwana, was struck with the polio virus, and with that, Odilia and Elias became lifetime carers for Nipro, as he was affectionately called. To make matters worse for Mama, Nipro's diagnosis came at the time when Papa was on his way to California for further studies. She was also pregnant with, unbeknown to her at the time, another set of twins. The story goes that the midwives, aware of the stresses Mama was under, did not tell her that she was due to have another set of twins until very late in the pregnancy. So with Papa away and Mama on her own, with the prospect of becoming a single mom of 4, including a very sick child, it was with this realization that Papa's junior brother, Ni Peter Nyonga Sama, quit school and moved to Womb to look after 4 children. Ni Peter shared a special bond with Papa, and they lived next to each other for the last 40 years of their lives. Ni Peter was a second dad to not just the Elias and Odilia Nwana children, but also all of our extended family. Leo, Judith, Gwen, Linda, Kado, Mabe would attest to that. Protu Samgwa Nwana, though struck by polio, was the most delightful brother. As a young couple, Odilia and Elias, along with their extended family, tried their utmost to get Protus cured of his ailment. Unfortunately, there was no cure for polio at the time, and he predictably grew up with the physical disabilities which polio inflicts on its sufferers. Ni Protus, as we fondly called him, bore his ailments with calm and grace. He lost his speech shortly after beginning to talk, and his limbs deteriorated with time. He never looked fazed by his conditions. He always bore a huge smile whenever you came by him. Papa and Mama never had a holiday together, as one of them always had to stay back to look after Ni Protus. Ni Protus died peacefully in the morning of the 26th of June in 1994, just short of his 30th birthday. He rests at the Roman Catholic Cemetery in Bali. May his soul and the souls of all the departed rest in peace. The second set of twins, Augustina Genla Nwana and Augustine Bambot Nwana, were born in, surprise, surprise, August of 1966. Perhaps our parents weren't at their most creative in naming children. The names Augustina and Augustine are known primarily to friends from their youth in Boya. Gerald Fay was brave enough to be born alone in March of 1969. Then came the twin girls, Nagwa and Najela, in January of 1971. Vincent came alone 5 years later in February of 1976. Odilia and Elias were fantastic parents to their nuclear family of 5 boys and 3 girls. Here are some photos of the family in several settings. In Boya, circa 1979. At their residence in Azari, Bamenda, circa 1985. In 1985 with the girls. In 1985 with the boys. At their Jumafor residence during their silver wedding anniversary in 1989. Jumafor 1989. At their golden wedding anniversary in December of 2013. Another photo from December of 2013. And finally, visiting Ni Protus's grave in December of 2013. In the early years of their marriage, Papa and Mama lived in Boya, Bambili, and back to Boya. Their home was never just a home to their ever-growing nuclear family. The house was always heaving with family members and friends who came for holidays or to stay, largely for education purposes. Auntie Bidi remembers fondly that, "Beloved Namani, I was a flower girl during their wedding. I loved and enjoyed your company so much that I refused to go back home to my mom and dad's house." Tani Nwana said, in his usual kind voice, "Leave her, she loves our company." She stayed and continues, "Since then, you both remained my most beloved parents." Auntie Maggie Wanandeli wrote of her brother Papa, "Ni, I know family has always been very important to you, and you have proved that in many ways. The one thing that stands out is the large number of family members that you have raised. I still remember you as a bachelor teaching in Sase. You had about 10 or more family members in your house. I still marvel how you looked after them. My own turn came when I came to live with you and Ma Odi in Bambili. I saw the number of family members who came in and out of your house, requesting one thing or the other. Now, as an adult, I realize how tough that must have been. I cannot emphasize how blessed our family was to have you both as the heads." Papa and Mama gained 7 children by marriage. These are Edwin, aka Bangkom Ngwanganwa, married to Tina in 1990. Andine, married to Sama in 1992. Langmia, married to Najela in 1993. Funjo, married to Nagwa in 1994. Judith, married to Faye in 1998. Yvonne, married to Bambot in 2007. Mambap, married to Vincent in 2007. These marriages resulted in 19 grandkids and 2 great-grandsons.
Papa Nwana's professional life. In 1963, Papa returned from Ghana with a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of Legon. He turned down an administrative job as assistant divisional officer for Bamenda, preferring to teach economics at CAST Kumba before being appointed as executive vice principal of CAST Bambili. He served in this position
until he departed for further studies at the University of California, Los Angeles. Upon his return, he was appointed as principal of Caste Bambili. Ba Mr. Augustine Dangam talks about the vision for caste and some of Papa's accomplishments.
He worked, his working life was spent mainly in the institution that we know today as the Cameroon College of Arts and Science and Technology, which was started by him and a team of educated Southern Cameroonians then in Kumba. But he is associated with this, intimately associated with caste, because this institution, as all Southern Cameroonians know, was started by the Southern Cameroon government as a pre-university course and was supposed to develop into the first university of Southern Cameroons. But the political association of Southern Cameroons with the Republic of Cameroon, or French Cameroon in those days, the first damage that was done was to caste. That institution was downgraded from what it was meant to be into a mere high school. But Dr. Nwana's life and work in caste, while he headed that institution as principal, he expanded it in the direction of the spirit that established that institution. Dr. Nwana was the one who introduced the expansion, the horizontal expansion of caste with School of Agriculture and the College of Education, Higher Teacher Training College. These were to be the arms of the university, and caste was to be a university. It was open at the same time that the Nigerian colleges of science and technology were open. And all those colleges in Nigeria eventually became universities.
Some of Papa's other achievements in his tenure at the helm of Caste Bambili include the construction of the iconic administrative building and student halls of residence in Caste Bambili. Having studied economics as a minor for his degree, he realized to his disgust that economics was not part of post-colonial curriculum in Cameroon. He corrected this glaring error by introducing the teaching of economics into the Cameroon educational curriculum. Finally, he proudly facilitated the admission of girls into Caste Bambili, thereby opening new horizons for the next generation of women leaders in Cameroon. By all accounts, his approach to administration was setting up the modalities that combine academic rigor with moral rectitude and responsible citizenship. Dr. Anthony Ndi recounts of his time as principal of Caste Bambili as follows. The nature of administration he injected into the system, emblazoned with transparency, firmness, and paternity, hence it was termed an administration with a human face, paternal, kind, and just, but firm and resolute. Ni Jongu and Ya Magi Kilo provided an insight of Dr. Nwana's time as principal of Caste Bambili.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this important anniversary of Pa and Mami Nwana. I am a very, very close friend of the family, especially Pa, who I hold a lot of gratitude. He was my friend, he was an educator, an advisor, and my savior, and finally my in-law. When I finished Sacred Heart College and had to enter CAS, I entered the school as a day student, and Pa gave me a challenge. He said, "Young man, if you want to become a boarding student, you have to study hard. If you can have all A grades in the first semester, you can transfer into CAS as a boarding student." And I did that. Lo and behold, I succeeded. I was so excited with Dr. Nwana, not only because he kept his word, but because I was no longer going to be committing to CAS Bambili as a day student. My second experience with Pa Nwana is one that I will never forget and will forever be indebted to him, as he transformed my life and the life of so many students. He left an indelible mark on me that transformed me into a responsible and mature person. Not only was Pa Nwana the principal of all students in CAS, but he was also a smart and caring father to us all. Towards the end of my second year in CAS Bambili, I became a father through my relationship with a young, beautiful lady called Anna Sire Ade, whose father was then the commissioner of police in Mafe. You understand now what it means to pregnant the daughter of the commissioner of police. Dr. Nwana de-escalated the problems and the tension and resolved the issue that was going to happen. He called me into his office. He said, "Joseph, what has happened?" When I confessed about the so many girlfriends I'd had, he stood up, shook my hand, said, "In 3 months, you'll be a father." And he was able to bring down all the tension we had, solve the problem of Pa Ade, who was very angry because I had pregnanted the first daughter. But he was a diplomat because he could de-escalate all the tensions we had. I went to his office and he asked me to sit down and asked me to go meet my elder brother to come and talk to him and to see how we can resolve this problem. What I'm trying to say is that he knew that I was a very serious student and that I was very outstanding in my work in class, and that I really did and still love my wife, Anna Ade.
My name is Ya Maggie Kilo, and I'm making this very short video to pay homage to two people. One whom I barely knew, but who really influenced me, and the other who is a very close friend of my family. They are Dr. and Mrs. Nwana. Well, Dr. Elias Nwana was principal of CAST Bambili when I took the GCE in 1973. And if you lived in Bamenda in the 1970s, CAST was this overwhelming place. Everybody wanted to go there. It was the only high school in West Cameroon at the time. And they had a competitive exams to enter CAST. Well, I didn't do too well in the GCE O levels. I only had 6 papers, and I knew that it was tough to get in. So I pulled my mom to go see Dr. Nwana, the mystery man. Everybody knew his name, but nobody really saw him because he was quite a reclusive person. So the first time I went to his house, because I pulled my mom to go make sure that I was on list B, he came out and he said in a very soft voice, and this man that I was expecting to see, a giant of a man, because his image was that big in Bamenda, he was just very soft, spoke to me very kindly, said, "You didn't need to make the journey here. You're on list B. You're the second name. So just go home and prepare. After the school reopens, you'll come The second time I saw him, he was in his office, and he was just so kind to me, so overwhelmingly the educator that I wanted to become. And he left me with this impression of a simple man who was so intelligent.
In 1973, he was posted to Buea, Southwest Province, as the Cultural and Provincial Delegate of Education for the Southwest Province, taking over from his student and subsequently bosom friend, Dr. Omar Weyi Yembe. Papa credited a lot of his career advancement to the advocacy and support from Dr. Yembe. He wrote in his biography, "Dr. Yembe will not like me to mention this, but my life history cannot be written without mentioning the role that he played in my life." Some of the photos shown here represent the depth of their professional and personal relationships that spanned activities ranging from signing education policies to sharing in their traditional Bali and Bot interests. Together, Yembe and Nwana were evangelists for education, as evident in this excerpt.
Dr. Nwana became very useful to me because he and his friend, Dr. Omar Yembe, oriented me towards education. And on graduation from the University of Yaoundé in 1973, I was going to residency to get a scholarship, and they stopped me at the Ministry of National Education. And Dr. Omar Yembe had just handed over to him as Provincial Delegate of Education in Buea, and they came to the ministry because Dr. Omar Yembe was taking a position in the ministry as director. And when they saw me, they asked me to immediately make an application to teach in government bilingual secondary school, Moliko. And I did, and submitted the application to Omar Yembe. And I was to start my teaching career till retirement, which means I had to go to Moliko with immediate effect against my desire, which had been to do diplomacy in the School of Diplomacy that was newly opened and for which relations had been established between me and Dr. Ndamjoya, who was director of the school. So I went to Buea for what I thought was going to be a temporal teaching job. And in the course of teaching, I met my cousin, Ma Odilia Nwana, who was teaching in the same institution.
Papa's time as cultural delegate for education in Buea until 1979 was when he established a lot of the educational institutions in the Southwest Province. He was passionate about ensuring equivalence of academic and vocational education and advocated the curriculum to have a Cameroonian context. Mami Norma Ndoping was a close collaborator at the Delegation of Education and remembers him as very decisive, highly educated in the academic sphere, highly knowledgeable, and deeply embedded in his Cameroonian culture.
Nwana became a very dear Moyo to me. But long before that, I got to know him as my boss. He was the provincial delegate of national education. and I was one of his chiefs of service. It was a happy time for me because he was somebody I could admire and trust. He was not only highly educated in the academic sphere, but he was also firmly rooted in his traditions. So I could learn a lot from him, and I did. But at the same time, he was always willing to listen to other people, to draw from their knowledge if it was helpful. And one of the things that he used to ask me to do was to have a look at important speeches or other things that he had written and see if there was anything I could do in the way of editing to improve them. At first I was diffident because I thought maybe if I made too many suggestions he would be offended. But when I told him that, he laughed and said, "It's your country talk." He was a very good listener, very kind man, someone I could admire then, I still admire now, and I remember him with a great deal of affection.
In 1979, having made a significant impact during his time at the helm of education in the Southwest Province, he was appointed as the Director of Studies, Charge d'Etudes, at the Ministry of National Education, a natural promotion for a visionary educationist. However, this was the least rewarding time of his professional career, finding the role far removed from the front line of providing education, which to him was a vocation. After just over a year, he negotiated to be transferred to the Ministry of Higher Education, specifically École Normale Supérieure in Bambili, to carry out his passion of educating the Cameroonian mind. Leading the Science of Education department at ENS Bambili for over a decade was his last engagement with the Cameroonian Civil Service. During this time, he was a trusted advisor and de facto assistant to a list of venerated directors of the institution, including Mr. A.T.M. Mofo, Professor Moses Asanji, and Dr. Omar Weyi Yembe. His life was also influenced by, in his words, the young and brilliant Dr. Ivo Leke Tambo, who ran the department with him and brought new ideas to the department and to Cameroon education. Top amongst this was Dr. Tambo's facilitation of a close collaboration between universities in Canada and Yaoundé. As part of these partnerships, he was seconded to work at the University of Regina in Saskatchewan, Canada. He enjoyed this period immensely and made numerous friends who would eventually organize and pay for treatment of a brain tumor that Papa had in 1990. He was very grateful for two of his students, cum sons, who looked after as he convalesced. The first of these sons was the then ambassador, Philemon Yang, who had been Papa's student in Caste Bambili, who signed as next of kin. The second was a doctoral student from Nigeria, Dr. Abimbola Abiola, who immediately took Papa as his own father and took him into his home for the duration of his post-operation care. The family remains indebted to these two brothers. Two pursuits post-retirement may be considered as final acts of protecting his legacy, of setting up the fundamental structures of education in Anglophone Cameroon. First, he and other Anglophone educationists were disturbed by a creeping policy that would threaten the existence of the English GCE qualifications. Leading Anglophone educationists Andrew Azongwara, Dr. Omar Weyi Yembe, and Dr. Elias Nwana were at the forefront of the fight to protest the GCE exams and fought for the creation of the GCE board. During this fight, his skills as a non-militant negotiator, along with his gravitas in the education sector, was constantly called on by the Prime Minister of the day, Honorable Simon Achidi Achu, to facilitate dialogue between the different focus groups. The initial lobbying resulted in the creation of the Sondengam Committee. This committee, which he was a member of, drew up the modalities for the operation of the GCE board in Cameroon. Secondly, still frustrated by the fact that Bamenda was still devoid of a fully fledged university, he worked alongside the others, including Honorable John Gu Foncha and Mrs. Anna Foncha, to found the Bamenda University of Science and Technology, BOST. He reluctantly served as the Vice Chancellor of the university, during which time he facilitated some of the building projects and signed a partnership with the University of Boya to validate degrees awarded by the institution. Papa was passionate about BOST and ensured that he handed over the reins to someone he had complete trust in. This was none other than Professor Matthew Gwanfokbe, his in-law.
Has been part and parcel of me, and Dr. Nwana has showed tremendous interest in me, always ready to come and be around, advising, directing, guiding. And when I came to the end of my career as Director of Econ or Mass Superior in the University of Bamenda, Dr. Nwana did everything to get me directly to start working in BOST, where he had been the director of the institution. So I eventually became the director, and I ran the institution from 2012, when I retired, till 2019.
This Hanover Act was his final formal contribution to Cameroon education. The early professional life of Mama Odilia Nwana. As a big sister to 6 living siblings and many extended family members, and mother of 8 children, Mama was no stranger to directing and disciplining. It is no surprise her professional life was centered around these 2 facets. She trained as a teacher in St. Francis Teacher Training College, Fiango, and at the Higher Teacher Training Institution, ENS Bambili, and served as an educationist within the Cameroon school system for 40+ years. At GBHS Moliko, where she taught history and economics, her cousin and colleague, Ni Mati Gwanfokbe, described himself as an untrained teacher who learned the craft of teaching from Mama.
And in the course of teaching, I met my cousin, Ma Odilia Nwana, who was teaching in the same institution. And she was so interested in the fact that I had also opted to do the teaching job. So we became very close again. She, as an experienced teacher, she initiated me into teaching and the methods of teaching, the preparation and exposition of my lessons. In the course of teaching, I found that it was an interesting job, and I forgot about the diplomacy that I had initially paid attention to.
Suffice to say, the discipline that was her hallmark from her youth was a distinguishing aspect of her teaching life. In fact, this discipline earned her the nickname of Margaret Thatcher. Two of her students from Moliko and GBHS Bamenda paint the picture of Mama as a teacher.
The family for giving me this opportunity to say a few words about my teacher, Mrs. Odilia Nwana Namayi. Namayi was a wonderful teacher who taught us more than her subjects of history and civics in Bilingual Grammar School, Moliko Boya. Bilingual Grammar School in our days, even though filled with brilliant students, could be a jungle at times. The school was not exactly known for its discipline. However, Namayi's presence always commanded calm, civility and discipline in the student body, particularly in her class. One of my classmates, Emil Fonderson, correctly puts it after her passing, I quote, "Hers was a little piece of home in a rugged landscape of lycée life." Namayi taught us discipline and self-respect. She was kind, warm-hearted, and generous, yet very strict, but in a caring kind of way. She was therefore respected by all students and her colleagues and staff in equal measures. Namayi was also very perceptive and only used few words to get her point across. I remember one day after her class, she called me to the side. I had clean uniforms, my shirt was buttoned up, so I was fairly confident that she wanted to talk to me about another student in the class as I was the prefect. Well, she had noticed that my hair was a little bit unkempt and she pointed it out to me in not so many words. She cared and expected more from me. I visited the barbers at my earliest convenience. Namayi was very humble and kind, never failed to give me words of encouragement and sometimes praise, whether meeting her in Bali, in Bamenda, or at the BCA USA convention, which was the last time I saw her. It was only after her passing that I heard all the children describing home life with Namayi. It is obvious that she wanted the best for the students, just like her children. She was genuine and authentic. I was privileged to have her as a teacher. In fact, she was my favorite teacher. Mama, your legacy lived on not just with your children and grandchildren, but also with me and thousands of your students. We all thank God for your life, Namayi. May you and Batanyi continue to rest in perfect peace with the Lord.
Hello there. This is my eulogy to Madame Odilia Nwana, one of my favorite teachers and a very generous, kind, amazingly beautiful lady. I first ran into Madame Nwana in 1974, the summer, when I was going to Lycée Bilang. I went to Boya, spent some time with the neighbors, the Photons, who we knew at Ambe, and Jackie, and we crossed over to the neighbors here at the Nwanas to play. Then she came into class in 74 September, happened to be my history teacher, and I was stunned. But I got my 2 prizes in Moliko, second prize in history from 1, first prize in history from 2, thanks to Madame Nwana. Many years later, I saw her in Bamenda when I was in class opposite and at the peak of my arrogance, youthful exuberance, and nobody could control me. But one time I was on Commercial Avenue and she showed up behind me and I just heard button up. I knew who that was. Turned around, it was Mrs. Nwana with her sister, Rose Nibba, who never knew anybody could control me. But she saw me hug her sister. She saw the affection, the admiration, and just from then on, Miss Nima couldn't get rid of me. I walked them to Jakarta, took their bags, put it in Miss and Mrs. Nebraska, and then Madame Nwana gave me $500 for power in France. I met her later in DC at Fonjo, a guy I'd gotten to respect and admire as housewarming. I saw Mrs. Nwana there. I'm in law school. I'm 30 with my wife. She carried me on her lap. My wife was sitting next to me. Nobody could understand why. But a truly amazing lady, a kind, generous, disciplinarian. And she will be missed. And I'm sure her family, her kids, everybody, I will wish us with peace. Rest in peace. Mama Odi, thank you for everything. Love you. Bye-bye.
Mama was a diligent economics teacher. At home, she and Papa, who was trained in economics as well, regularly discussed and refreshed Mama's lecture notes to include new and relevant examples that made the subject more accessible to her students. Mama was a chief examiner of the GCE O-level economics exam for many, many years, with responsibility for setting, moderating, marking, and ensuring the integrity of the exams. Mentorship was one of Mama's hallmarks. She was a pioneer female educationist and took many young female teachers under her wings as mentees. Ma 4, Edwan Fon, speaks of Mama's influence on her as a young teacher in GBHS Bamenda.
Let me start by thanking Lady O's children for approaching me and asking that I say a word or two about my mentor, their mother. She's called Mrs. Nwana. I call her Lady O. And after a little while, all the people around me called her Lady O because she embodied the whole her ladyship thing. Her grace, her poise, everything about her was so ladylike. Can't say that about me because I'm now and again a tomboy, but I would like to take a few minutes and talk about my mentor, somebody who listened to me, somebody I always wanted to be like, to a point where when I had my last baby, I asked Dr. Nana, don't I have another one in there? I just wanted to be a Mani, just like Lady O. And Dr. Nana, my uncle, said, please roll off the bed. You have one baby and the baby has come out. So, Lady O, I know you're in heaven and somewhere along the line you would get to hear this. But while you were here, I made sure that I reminded you of how you took me under your wings when I came to GBHS as a science teacher, and you mentored me. You expected a whole lot from me because I was Tina's college mother in Our Lady of Lords. Tina was so small and so young, and she was brought in, and you and Dr. Nwana handed Tina to me. And so when later on in life I showed up as a teacher on the same staff with you, you expected so much from me, so much. You were my counselor, you were my provided guidance, you raised my confidence, you told me that I could do it, and you expected me to do really well. I thank you, even though you're in heaven, and I thank you through your children for loving me so much. I thank you for calling me one day and holding a really quick conversation with me, and you said a relation of yours had died and that you all were not too sure if her marriage was very good, and that you wanted me to talk to you if I ever felt like I needed to talk to somebody, if I ever felt like something was going wrong, I could come talk to you. I want to say thank you today. I want to say thank you for the love. I want to say thank you for the guidance. I want to say thank you for the advice. I thank you for everything. I say this through your children. God bless.
In a twist of fate, Mama and her cousin, Dr. Gwan Fogbe, were appointed to leadership positions at Government Bilingual High School, Bamenda. Mama was senior discipline mistress, reporting to Dr. Gwan Fogbe, who was principal of the college. She was known for her no-nonsense approach to disciplining students, with a goal to instilling a strict sense of responsibility in them. Dr. Gwan Fogbe talks of how he leaned on Mama in the execution of his duties as principal.
How close I was with my cousin, Ma Odilia Nwana. Fate seemed to have actually put us together. Besides working in Moliko, it so happened that when I was made principal of GBHS Bamenda, she was also made the senior discipline mistress of the same institution. As a discipline lady and me as principal, we were bound to work very closely together. It was big fortune for me because I profited from her experience, from her zeal, and from her ability not only as a mother but as a disciplinarian. And she was always at my call, especially when I have an important issue of administration or when I had an important staff meeting, issues that were to come up, we discuss it behind before getting to the stage. And she was very helpful to me.
Mama retired in 2002, a few years after Papa, and together they led a life of service to the wider family and populace. In particular, the fact that they had more time on their hands meant that they were able to be grandparents to their 19 grandchildren. Here in a nutshell are outside interests and their later professional lives. Christianity was one of them. Papa and Mama were both very God-fearing Catholic Christians and contributed their services to many initiatives at both archdiocese and parish levels. It was their strong faiths that would perhaps account for the following statements by Mama and Papa. When asked once whether his sight loss was depressing to him, Papa stated immediately that I believe I will see again, if not on earth, then in the kingdom of heaven. Papa always told us, the children, that we were his eyes. I remember walking in the park one Saturday afternoon with Papa, and I tried holding his hands, and he immediately smirked to me and said, "Najala, are you scared I would fall?" And I said, "No, Papa, I am next to you." And he said, "Yes, I know. I can see through your eyes." Mama, in her farewell letter to her children, wrote, "The end of life for me has come in God's own time. There is no reason for you to weep and mourn for one who has, to a greater extent, completed her life's mission." Mama and Papa were very cultured. They were very indebted to their culture. Both Mama and Papa were very interested in their Bali culture and contributed to curating the culture. Mama wrote, taught all her grandchildren Bali words and prayers and food items and kitchen utensils and plants. And she was a founding member of Fed Bamenda. Papa was instrumental in starting the formal curation of Bali Nyonga culture. Ba Mr. Augustine Dangam summarized their contributions to Bali culture.
He was interested in Bali culture and in research and documentation of Bali arts and culture. It is through his interests and activities concerning Bali culture that we started documentation. In fact, there is a small genesis of a museum in the palace in Bali. And this idea came from the late Dr. Nwana, who encouraged not only culture, but he wanted it documented and preserved. And so he came up with this idea about a museum that could gather all things from the reign of Nyong Pasi, Galaga the First, and so on, and get museum experts from Europe to come and advise us on how to start a museum. Those artifacts are still there in the palace in Bali. And when Galaga II died, he gathered a team of us, a number of us, comprising Professor Vincent Titanji, Professor Matthew Gwanfogbe, Professor Adolf Lima, and myself, and we held a meeting in his house, and it said we should take this matter of documenting our culture seriously, and that we should start. So we divided ourselves to writing papers, and this paper he and Dr. Titanji, Professor Titanji, edited into an introduction to Bali culture.
Papa and Mama were passionate about farming. Both had common interests of gardening and farming. They made sure that the children were imbued with the love of gardening and farming, even if it was not always welcomed by the children. Mama made sure that their compounds were always blossoming with flowers. They owned several farms in Bali, in Butu, in Bambili, and Bambui, and all children had experiences of going to the farm with them over summer vacations. They also sometimes asked us, the children, to take the produce to the market in order to understand the full value chain involved with our feeding. Finally, they found a way of weaving education into our farming exploits by constantly asking us to write essays relating to our experiences in the farm or market. And in some cases, all our proceeds from selling those items, food items in the market, went back to the schools or to the churches that we were associated with. Music. In addition to farming, Papa and Mama enjoyed music until their last days. They also had the appreciation for creative skills that music could give their children. They invested in an organ and a music teacher, Mr. Chinedum, who taught all the children how to read and play music. The children passed this tradition to the grandkids and are proud that some of the grandkids have taken this interest even to the extent of forming careers related to music. Papa and Mama's fortitude in latter years. Papa and Mama suffered ill health in their latter years. Papa lost his sight in 2014, but showed formidable strength of spirit and led a full life. He mastered his way around all of the houses that he lived in and simply got on with life. He even survived a major brain operation in 2019. Mama's health took a turn for the worse from 2016 when Parkinson's-like symptoms started manifesting, resulting in a loss of mobility and speech. Both of them bore their illnesses with courage and fortitude. The family would like to take this opportunity to thank all those who looked after Papa and Mama. Papa passed away in his sleep on April 1st, 2021 in Washington, and Mama died 8 months later on their wedding anniversary, December 26th. We want to take this opportunity to thank you, to the community, family and friends, for the financial and moral support received. Here are a sample of photos from their funeral ceremonies. They together now rest at the Bali Roman Catholic Cemetery. The following is written on their tombstones. The end of life for me has come in God's own time. There is no reason for you to weep and mourn for one who was, to a greater extent, completed her life's mission. For papas, my life has combined attributes of fortuitousness, steely determination, hard work, military-instilled discipline, and a sense of giving back to fellow mankind. We now continue their legacy by launching the Elias and Odilia Nwana Foundation, focusing on education, farming, music, and mental health.